Hello, Nye, and welcome to the podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this for a couple reasons. One is people may not know you and I have known each other for a very
Very long
long
time.
time, over
Yep.
30 years now.
Wow. I hadn't put a number next to it, but yes, the college days. We were children together.
I graduated 30 years ago, which is crazy. So,
Uh-huh.
obviously we met a little before I graduated. So, it's always nice when I can reconnect with an old friend for the podcast. But
Yeah. And
also,
yep.
you, not just a random person. Are you from college? You and I did improv together in college. We did improv when I did my first improv group after college,
That's
Polywampus. You were
correct.
one of my founding members in that group.
Founding members of that. Exactly. I mean, improv is really big in my formative years, really important to me.
Yeah, and since then you have well, your whole background was in design and arts and drawing. You do your drawings, and
Drawings, that's right.
I forgot about that. It popped in my head. But you had a really interesting path in terms of you worked in entertainment for a while, and you've been
Yep.
working on game development design, and now you're like teaching and stuff. So,
Yeah.
just for the unfortunate souls listening who don't have the joy that I do of knowing you as well,
Okay.
could you give us like the 1 minute Aniran
Okay.
story?
Sure. Yeah, I started off cartooning and building Lego and just pursuing creativity, and that includes improv and art and all kinds of stuff. But I was very much a traditional artist, and I would use computers for like Photoshop or. But then I got really into them, and I kind of went the whole other spectrum. And um, I was an animator for a while where I was doing 3D animation,
Hmm.
and went to California for that. And I did some movies, and then I started doing pre-visualization in movies, working with game engines, always playing with stuff. So I was primarily a contractor in entertainment, and then animation was kind of like, I think, the staple. Like even when I was a creative, I was always making characters or telling stories. And then even with tech, I'm always pursuing characters or animation or something along those lines, or AI, how it can be integrated. But I went through like motion capture pipelines and animation data, and then that led me into AI, and then I started like playing with that. Um, so yeah, I was in LA for about 20 years, and then after the pandemic, the project that I was on just like crashed, and I went into teaching. And so now been really focused on how do you teach game development and think about creative technology, but also, AI and what's coming.
Well,
So
I want to get into a lot of that or all of that. But first, just to brag on you a little bit, and by extension, make my podcast sound a little more impressive.
okay,
Right.
cool.
When we talk about, when you're like, I worked on some movies and this and that, like, a lot of people can say that, and these little like indie, like you literally were your work, you contributed to like real major, like, is it true if I recall correctly? Did
Sure.
you animate the opening feather or leaf falling at the beginning of the movie
Yes,
Monster
that was
House?
my first job in entertainment when I went to LA. I was on a movie called Monster House. And as a rookie animator, they gave me the longest shot in the movie where I had to animate a leaf. So if you look at Monster House, which is like a two minute sequence, it's old movie now, which is crazy, but
It's on my queue of movies to show my kids. I haven't gotten because they're not
it's a
great
little
with like things that
scary.
are a little scary. So,
Yeah. And that was the first time I did motion capture. That whole movie was kind of a motion capture
hmm.
blend. So in a way that was a pivotal point in my career. But yes, I animated the leaf on that. Um,
So
that was
everyone
my
go watch
first.
Monster House. At least the first 2 minutes. That leaf, that was Nye's animation. So
That's right. And I am in the credits there, at the very, like if it lets go by and after everyone's left and all the popcorn guys are being cleaned up, then you'll see my credit go by in the Monster House movie.
excellent. Well, I'll make my kids do that. My kids want to watch all credits now, anyways, because no matter what movie, they could be a movie that was made like 40 years ago. They'd be like, is there like a bonus at the end? The mid credits or the post
Oh,
credit
right.
scene?
Yeah. The Marvel reveal where something
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
And I'm always like, no. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, well, we can watch. But now when it's one of your movies, I'll make sure we watch a credit. That'll be the way I can trick them into watching the
My
credits.
favorite movie that I ever worked on was the worst movie ever, but it's called Battleship. It's by Peter
Ah, I
Berg.
remember. I think I saw that.
Yeah, it was absolutely terrible, but it is one of the most fun movies I've ever done because I was with like these really awesome people and we had aliens and explosions and it was just complete chaos and fun. And so not every project is like just because it's like, Avengers or something is great to work on, but sometimes you get these real terrible movies that you get on, but the people and the opportunity to do creative stuff is super fun.
And
So,
sometimes it's the worst, right? Sometimes the opposite, like the terrible working experiences might result in a not
yeah.
necessarily even because like so talk about gaming. One of my favorite games of all time is The Witcher 3.
Yep.
But then when I learned more about it, I was listening to like podcasts about it. Like evidently, there were like horrible people to work for, and they really just like were almost abusive to their employees. They worked them to the bone. I'm like, oh, that's sad. It's like you want everything around the thing you like to be good. So I guess it's just like the
Yeah.
working conditions doesn't necessarily relate
I
directly
mean,
to
if you
output.
look at the reality of working in entertainment, it's lots of late nights, it's unrealistic deadlines. I mean, there's also just Hollywood tropes. The the sunglasses and the deal making out is more important than the day-to-day production. So what's amazing to me is that I was surrounded by some of the most talented people from around the world working on these crazy things, but we were all shoved in rooms working with round the clock to hit our deadlines. And then once
Mm.
it was done, we had to move on to the next one. So you're kind of just like moving from project to project when you work in LA. And it's a hustle.
Well, it's interesting, right? I could talk about, I mean, I just am very curious and interested in the entertainment industry. I could talk to you about this, but for the sake of the podcast, it's more about, say, non-entertainment, listeners, like people working kind of
Mhm.
corporate environment and stuff. But there's an interesting sort of leadership thing there in that that's kind of the model, right? Now, would you say you've been in there, so would you agree that that model is allowed to exist because there are so many people who want to work there that they're willing to put up with that?
Um, Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I mean, also artists just suck at business, right? They come in and so they are willing, they're there not because of the money, they're there because they're interested in doing something interesting, like creative and
Hmm.
right. Animators get into it not because they want to, like, you can go to Wall Street or something. You get into animation because you want to tell stories, you want to like play with these things or do something really technical or problem solving wise. And so it attracts a certain kind of personality. I feel like that certain personality is not very good at negotiating or understanding things like intellectual property or all the things that are important for you to engage as a contractor. So it's skewed really badly against creatives and artists, which is not
Mm.
great. Part of the reason why I like teaching is because I like teaching about what does it take to be, know your worth, and this is my work, and this is how, hey, what's crunch like here today. Um, I think it's possible to build production that is sustainable, that doesn't grind your workers, that everyone feels very, very engaged with, and it's generally the opposite to a lot, not all of them. There are some studios that I felt like actually understood that their people were the most valuable thing. And I think that they had sustainable models, but I think there's a lot of studios that were really based on like we just need to get people in and fire them, and it that was much more turbulent.
Yeah, and I, don't want to make this podcast beyond what it's meant to be, but it seems like you see that, and more lately, it seems in business in general, like the short term. Like I just commented on someone's LinkedIn post about now, cruise lines are changing
Yeah,
their loyalty program. So it used to be if you cruise this much over a certain amount of time, you got lifetime access. Now they're going back on and they're like, well, now you have to spend like, I don't know, $15,000 a year to maintain this status, right?
yeah,
And I was asking on this like thread, I'm like, do you think that's because they're like database people or spreadsheet people figured out this is a better long-term play, or do you think it's just a short term? And most people were like, no, this is just like how we can maximize money in the short term. Um,
yeah.
and then And it seems like that model you're talking about, like the sustained success versus just like churn and burn, like just get it done and then we'll worry about the next one when it's time for the next one.
I mean, that's just how the business runs.
Hmm.
A movie gets greenlit, people like mad, furiously bid on it. Everyone contracts as quickly as possible. You scale up as quickly as possible. You turn, and sometimes it's extraordinarily amazing, right? I had friends who worked at Rhythm and Hues in Los Angeles on Life of Pi. That was like extraordinary, creating a tiger. I mean, now with AI, it's kind of like whatever. But at that time, that was like the most advanced thing you'd ever seen that happened. But then Rhythm and Hues went out of business, which just shows that the whole business is really based on a rapid burn and turn. Even when you have these phenomenal visual effects artists or animators or things like that creating at a very, very high level, it's still just how quickly can we deliver and get it out. So I don't want to completely knock my time in LA, so I will come back with it. It was actually a fun experience. It was just an enormous amount of energy and a lot of late nights. And I learned an incredible amount. And I worked with some really awesome people, and I'm grateful for the experience. But it has its costs
Well, let's
associated.
talk. Let me talk a little bit more about your experience there, because also I think I was about to say I don't think I could do that because of this, but then I realized it's sort of what my life is like now. Anyways, because
Yeah,
there's a certain amount of change and ding moments and instability, right? Because like you said, it's not like you work really hard on a project and then you get a breather for the next one. Like you are essentially everyone is done, fired, contract ends, and then you're out of a job essentially until you
yep,
get hired for the next contract, right?
yep.
So how did you sort of manage that both practically, logically, but also emotionally?
Well, the first is that I tell myself at the midpoint it's lunchtime. At the mid, if let's say it's a 6 week project, at week 3, I start calling a bunch of people to go to lunch because I'm trying to start lining up the next one.
Okay.
And right. So that's something that I always do. And it just gives myself an excuse because it's really hard. You know how it is really hard to look for work and to do things. So if you be proactive and say, I'm having lunch with, Fred, because I hear that movie might be, being discussed or something, you try to stay close to the ground because you're looking for the next gig.
So the LA
Um,
lunch thing is not just a stereotype.
no, it's hilarious. Yes. Preferably they live close to you, so you don't have to go to Pasadena if you're living on the west side.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, so that's one thing that I do. I think you just get used to it. I was told on a Thursday that I was flying to Australia, and then on Friday morning saying, "No, they got the plugs got pulled. You're not going anywhere." I've been dumped from projects many, many times. Uh, I mean, I was in New York when, 9/11 happened, and I remember they were just like, "Okay, this studio is now closed because we have no." So I have been routinely been through a number of studios that have just been dumped for various reasons. And you just kind of get used to it, and then you learn to be multifaceted. One of the things I've also learned to do, and one of the reasons why I think I've learned technology at the rate that I have, is that I just say I know how to do so. I don't know if this is right or not, but people have been like, "Hey, Nye, can you do this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can." And then you
Yes,
go into
and
it, yeah, yes, and right. And then I go home on a weekend and I learn whatever I just said that I know how to do, and hope that I have enough competency to be able to do it, because what I put stock in is my ability to problem solve very quickly on the fly, and that's what you're getting. But the specifics of it, or the software of it, or the discipline of it is changing so rapidly. So I think you just have to learn to be adaptable. I
well,
have
I
never worked a job longer than 14 months, except for when I started teaching.
that's amazing because I find it and I talk about this in my keynotes and stuff. Like, so many people are just afraid of uncertainty, and so I think developing that skill of like, all right, here's how I adapt is now you were forced into it, and that's the way the industry worked. But I think so many could benefit from that. But I do want to talk about that say yes thing. I've been meaning to write this article or blog post for a while. I have like the note, but you'll appreciate it. So you're obviously, Todd McFarlane,
Mhm.
the artist, comic book guy.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, he's so interesting, and I love listening to like interviews and stories about him.
Mm.
And he was doing an interview on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he talked about like this toy fair he went to, and he wanted to get his Spawn toys made, and people like this and that. And as one person came to me and said, oh, can you make these in a 5-inch size? And he was, of course, like, oh, absolutely. And they're like, well, can you get it to us in time for the Christmas thing? He's like, yes. And now he didn't have a manufacturer. He had no idea how to make a 5-inch size. And on the podcast, he said, always say yes to the opportunity. Like you will figure it out, force yourself to figure it out. And I think that is such like it's like stepping into uncertainty, right? It's like, I don't know, but everyone wants to have not everyone, but so many people want to have the A to Z, the plan mapped out, everything before they move forward. But like you said, you're just like, well, flip it a little
But
bit.
there is never, I have never worked on a project in my entire life that people have been like, this is what we're doing. And then it just went and did that. That has never, ever happened on anything that I've ever worked for. Even if I
Hmm.
have a complete vision and I've like storyboarded every single second, when you get into it, it will change. That's just, and
Yeah.
then you have to kind of say, when that happens, when you make a mistake, you just have to be like, is that cool? All right, yeah, why not? I'll just go with it. Because if you stay firmed on, I've got to fix it because I got to stick with the plan, you're never going to finish.
Yeah. And the one caveat I will say to that, because I was thinking about this, is I think there's like, there's gonna be some risk mitigation, right? It's not like, oh, someone comes to you, oh, can you do this? And in order to do it, you gotta mortgage your house and invest $100,000 in this thing, and like,
Yeah.
but we conflate fear with like something like drastic like that versus like, oh, I might be a little embarrassed or I might have to, you know, fail at something, right? So I think there's logical extremes that you gotta be careful about, but in terms of professional growth,
Well,
the opportunity, like,
I mean, bracket your risk. Say, man, I've always wanted to make an app that does X, Y, and Z. Then give yourself 1 week, build a prototype, and put it in front of a couple of friends. Like, or if you're like, I have an idea for a graphic novel, well, then draw some characters and then send it to some people and see if they like it. Make a website, put your energy into a really short, achievable goal for the idea and see if it gains traction.
you know,
And then you gain like energy out of it, right?
have you heard from the entertainment world, the story of Friday the 13th?
No.
So the guy who I forgot his name, but the guy who started Friday the 13th, the movie series, had
Yeah.
the idea for Friday the 13th. Just the idea. He thought it'd be cool to make a horror movie. No idea about it. Took an ad out in a trade, like
Hmm.
coming this Friday the 13th. And the response to it was so big that he went and made the movie.
Yeah.
Just from like a static, not a commercial, just a static image ad. So it's kind of like to your point, like and this is I'm working on this new book where I've got this yes and framework where each letter in yes and stands for a step, and the one I've been talking about for 20 plus years is the S, which is start small and take small steps. It's like you don't have to have, like you said, the whole plan. Just put the website together, put a prototype together, sketch out a thing. Is that what you kind of shifting to the present? Is that the approach you recommend to your students?
Yeah. I mean, there's this expectation in teaching creativity that there is a method, that you're going to learn a method, a series of steps that everybody in the industry sort of subscribes to. And I think that it's good to have a sense of what that method is. Like animators animate at 24 frames per second, and then they offset things and they use, a set of principles. Um, I'm of the mindset that everything is on the table and you should just like iterate, but you should deliver. You should constantly deliver. And when I started moving into like game engines at the end of my entertainment career, and one of the things that I found was the successful teams always pushed every week or every other week or whatever it was. There was like a regular sort of um, pace to it. And even if they had very little updates, it was always functional. So you see a lot of explosive creativity, but then you see they actually ship a functional working thing. And it might not be beautiful, but it's the iterative process of completing, like hitting it and then looking at, hey, is this functional? Does this work? What's the problem? And then listing all those problems, using that for the next push. Um,
So when you're
I
talking
would
about,
go, yeah.
sorry, just a real quick question about that. When you're talking about pushes like that, are you talking about like a sprint to finish a whole thing, or are you talking about like just doing like one segment and then shipping that and then the next segment, or could it be either or
Yeah,
both?
so you know, let's take a video game, for example. You start with, well, what makes this thing fun? You build your mechanic, your really simple mechanic. If you're jumping around, you want to build a character jumping around. Okay, by Friday, I'm going to have a character jumping around. You play it, five people are like, this is awesome. I want to play more of this. Then you're like, okay, well, let me take that character and build a simple level out of it, or let me make some sketches to see if there's a world around it or something. You do it incrementally, right? I think what happens is a lot of artists think, I'm going to make a fantasy game, and they start drawing trees or a character, but they don't build the little pieces that you need to kind of scale upon. And I think you can grow. You're not making a huge tree, you're making a baby tree. You're making the simplest, littlest thing, the best, most representative thing you're trying to make. Um, as I've gotten like older creatively, I've stopped. Like I used to be when I was young, I was like, I'm gonna make an epic movie, I'm gonna make a multiplayer or whatever. But now I'm like, I'm gonna write a blog post. If I have an idea, I'm gonna put in a blog post out. I'm gonna see what kind of traction. I'll talk to some people, and then that's gonna fuel my informed decisions. And I try to get my students or other people that I talk to think that, iterative movement towards what you're working on. It's going to be change, it's whatever, but you're kind of constantly taking sort of bite size, and you're also coordinating everybody to be on that, like in sync, right? So we're like, hey, we're all in agreement that we're going to have the bad guy moving around by Friday. And then you hit it by Friday, there's a celebration. Yeah, we all did it. Now what's next? Well, the bad guy's moving around, but he sucks. His sword is stupid and he doesn't have whatever. Well, how can we dress that up? Okay, by next Friday, we're going to have a scary bad guy. Um, and that's kind of the mindset that I've moved towards. And so I don't really read as many. I used to read a lot of books which are like, learn some Python framework in 24 hours or something, like those
Hmm.
kinds of books. And I've moved into more sort of philosophical or maybe production books, like productivity books, like the Ferris or Atomic Habits or things, those kinds of things that make you think, okay, well, what kind of milestones should I be shooting for and outcome for, and the tooling will just evolve. Like if I need a tool, I'll research it and I'll do it. I'm not gonna lead with learning Photoshop or a game engine. I'm gonna lead with, I want to make this thing over here and do it by Friday.
Like I like that. It's very like improvisational, sort of improv comedy
Oh
sort of
yeah.
approach, right? It's like, well, here's my idea, but I'm just gonna make my one offer, and let's see how people respond to it. Let's see how my if my partner picks it up. Let's see how the audience responds, and do we continue down that?
Yeah.
Because you've done improvs. The worst thing you can tell when an improviser has like an end in mind for their scene or story, and they're just not. They're just
And they're
tunneling that
forcing
way.
it to go, and it's not coming to where it naturally should be.
Yeah,
So
and so this is kind of I think it's for like I said, a lot of people listening are probably not necessarily animators or game developers, but they're people working, in corporate teams. But the same
yeah.
kind of rule applies. You've still got an idea for a project or an initiative at work. Same sort of thing. Like instead of trying to do the whole thing, just, what's that one piece you can, you know, publish essentially, quote unquote, this next week? Like, what can I do this week that's going to move this a little bit forward? And then we can evaluate what happened and what needs to be the next step.
Also, you can fake it, right? If you get people to see what you're talking about, even if it's not fully functional, that's almost worth it. So, you know, going big and sensational, but still having an action plan, I think is very, very important. Most of my work in LA was working in pre-visualization, which means that we'd be on teams to develop what's going to happen in the movie because it was too cost expensive to do it, with like, ILM or Sony or something is going to cost all that money. How do we do it really simply in the computer to say, oh, does this camera belong here? And how much does this cost? It's a problem solving mechanism. But a lot of what previs really was used for was to go to an executive, and an executive would be like, this is a bank chase. It's going to kind of look like this. And they go, oh, you're going to have machine guns and explosions. I see why I'm spending the money on it. And so if you have an idea, um, because this happens to me all the time. I always get stuck in the functionality. I try to because tech is not as easy for me as drawing. So like getting the code to work, whatever, and I'll show somebody, and it's not really all that spectacular. Whereas if you create a good looking puppet of an image and you make some noises and explosions and people get excited about it, they're like, oh, well, we're going to need a Python program to help it out because that's going to need that, you need to have that selling point as much as you have the kind of like milestone mindset.
Oh, I love that. And that's really all about getting, that's yet another reason to get started. It's not even necessarily to have the finished project, but just to be able to get other people on board and show them what you're doing. And then
Yeah,
if you're being collaborative, then they might come up with ideas that you didn't see if you
yeah,
get started.
yeah. I try really hard to also be open and kind of stupid. Like a lot of my ideas are dumb, but people are like, "Oh, no, you're such a nut." When they have a crazy idea, because people do have crazy ideas, then they call me because they know that I'm like into crazy ideas. And so I think it just helps to be that. And then really the only cost is just putting yourself out there, which I know and it's taken me a really long time to be able to just be like, screw it, here it is. Like even when I was doing improv, there was always that we call it without a net for that reason at Penn. And it's just like you have this incredible fear that you just have to step through. I still have a lot of problems dealing. I think we all do as creatives, and the only way to counteract that is almost to run your own anxiety and just be like, blah.
Well, which is yet another reason to ship, to publish, to produce, because the more you do it, like I'm like you, like I still hate the feedback. I've done, I don't know, hundreds of presentations and keynotes, and
Yeah,
I still, every so often afterwards, the client will be like, "Oh, we here's a compilation of the feedback forms," and I still like feel a little bit of like nervousness clicking open. Even though like it went great, and I know it went great, the client was happy. It's like you never quite get over that like fear of putting yourself out there, but it is easier now than it was. But if you're like, well, I need this thing to be so polished to be feedback proof before I ship, like A, you're never gonna get there. B, no matter how polished it is, someone is still gonna not like it.
yeah. I've discovered that if I have to push actual send now on my blog or anything like that, I won't do it. I actually have to schedule a post at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm asleep and I won't even know that it's going out because I'm just, and then even sharing it on social media and things like that has still been really enormously difficult. In fact, I did a comic blog for a while called Nye
Oh, yeah, I
which is
remember that.
probably like, yeah, it was probably one of the most honest things I've ever done in my life. Didn't do it for money. I just did it for fun. And I started sharing it and I actually got like tractionable audience. Like when I would publish in iTunes at its height, it was maybe like a couple thousand, which is,
Well,
not bad. Um, I freaked out because I iced myself. I couldn't write anything because I became more concerned with what people were going to read than my ability to write and whatever. And I think ultimately it kept me from producing more content. And so, I
mm,
mean, it would have helped if I had found a business model and, being a cartoonist and things like that. But I went off and did other things. And I kind of regret that I didn't stick with it because if I had just kept the pace up. So I'm trying really hard now to keep a regular timber and almost not even care about what analytics or anything is. And that's why I automate things to try to like
that's smart.
push
Uh,
myself through it.
yeah, it's fascinating though. It's so funny because you said Nitune, you like did it with no business goal or anything. It was just for yourself or just like for some fun to do. And
Yeah,
then even as it was just something fun to do, you started to feel that pressure of like the likes, the reviews, how are people going to like this? Even though it was really just something you're doing for yourself, it
yeah,
is amazing how much we care about. And I can totally relate to that. I mean, most of the stuff I do has a business purpose, but I'm still always looking at the analytics and who's reading this and did it get any shares
totally.
and just kind of thinking back to that, like me trying to remind myself about that authenticity. Like, well, I do have to remind myself that because I get so caught up in best practices and here's kind of how what the algorithm likes. And I recently just went through this and it's funny. Long story short, I'm using Chat GPT to help format some things. And I went through a program with a special custom GPT and it's great. And it takes my content and makes it sound a certain way. But then I realized it's starting to sound like everything that everyone's
Yes.
posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I went through this thing like almost a meltdown, and where I literally just Sunday, like at this time of this, like 5 days ago, where I had this chat with Chat GPT about Chat GPT and the format, and I'm like, this all sounds the same. Like this needs to be more me. And so I like completely rewrote this post I was much happier with because I kind of like what you're saying is like I was maybe not necessarily following the best practices anymore, but it felt much more authentic and me.
Yeah. Um, my kids are into David Bowie, which I think is kind of cool that I get to re-listen to some of this music that is now talk about 40
Yeah,
something
that's
years old.
awesome.
But there's a quote in their room where David Bowie talks about one of his creative drivers is to do the thing that scares him. Like if
Hmm.
he's doing something and he feels a little nervous or scared about it, it's a cue to him that he's kind of going to a more authentic place. And I think about that quote a lot because as I try to write and think about things, I'm like, well, what should I write about? And the easy thing to say is, well, let me just go and well, a lot of people want to know about this thing with AI, but then I have this fear or this nagging something or other that is kind of outside of that. And I've been pushing to that because it scares me. And so I think I'm using that, my kind of anxieties and my fear as a more authenticated. In fact, I would say Nitune was actually motivated by me wanting to be creative because I felt stuck in sort of corporate environments a lot. And that also was fueled by anxiety. So you have to channel in what makes you productive. And I think you get better stuff about it. The problem is it doesn't have the same sort of, you know, reach. Google's not going to like you as much if you're unique, I think is part of the problem.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then reach in this day and age might be a little overrated as well, though, because reaching the people, like a smaller group of people that really like and support you versus the let me go
Yes.
viral and get a million views and likes on
Yes.
this. But now in an era of TikTok and things like that, like going viral for so many people is the goal versus like connecting with kind of your tribe.
And I think that's 100% my mission with what I've been doing recently and it's working. I'm connecting with a small audience of people who I talked to one person who was like, you should do TikTok. Or it's like, that's not really my thing. I don't want to make myself accessible. I want to speak to a number of people who, well, first of all, I want to talk to the next younger generation who are kind of sort of tuning into it. But I do want to talk to people about these things. And I think it's better to connect with a small number of people who are reasoned and understand than just batching something everywhere, right? Getting something viral on TikTok is a completely different skill than trying to put an argument out.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about those two things. First, starting with your blog or your regular writing, which you do once a week. Is that on?
I have been, yeah, so I made the commitment in December. Like I was like next year, every week. And since December, I've done a blog post every week. And at first I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'll use AI, but it's actually become increasingly difficult because the more I experiment with AI, the more conscious I'm aware that I have to produce content that I feel is compelling or authentic. And so it's actually getting harder and harder, I feel. I'm facing the same pressures potentially that I felt with building Nitune,
Well,
but
it's interesting
it's been
because some
good.
of your recent posts have been about like I wrote a post and I had AI wrote a post and AI's wrote post was better than mine. So what do I do now? Like you're kind of writing about your experience with that as well.
Yes.
Well, let's
Yeah,
take a step back before we kind of dig into that
sure.
for people listening. So, um, your this is you hosted on Paragraph. Is that
Yeah, I host my blog on Paragraph. So Paragraph is a decentralized blogging platform that's on the blockchain, basically. I was using a platform called Mirror, but I migrated to Paragraph. Uh, and I chose that specifically as opposed to a Substack because I do believe that, the blockchain might be a way for us to um, record our intellectual property. And so there are some blog posts that are about that as well. So I'm talking about where technology is going from a creative point of view, right? So if I am a creative who is currently engaged as a designer, what are the things that I'm thinking about? Where is technology going? What are the jobs going to be? I spend a lot of time in my day job thinking about where students 4 or 5 years from now are going to be and trying to imagine that, but then specifically from the context of somebody who was a game developer, or an animator, or a designer, or creative. And so that's a lot of the motivation of what I write about.
Got it. So, well, let's ask the million-dollar question, Nye. Where is technology going?
Um, I mean, that's a multifaceted question. One thing that motivates me the most to that question is I have a blog post coming out that I'm calling the Biff problem, which I think might be great to share with you. Is that in Back to the Future 2, older Biff gave his younger Biff a sports almanac.
Hmm.
And as a result, he fractured time. And then when Marty went back to 1985, Biff was essentially the emperor of Hill Valley.
Yeah.
And he owned Marty's mom. He killed Marty's dad. He had all the cops. Everybody was living in terror. And that was basically because he had the ability to predict the future. He had data that could predict the future. And I think that if you look at the sports almanac, it's a sort of parable for what's happening with AI. And I think that there's a small number of people who know how to use it really, really well. And my concerns are that we are going to have a lot of biffs. And then there's going to be a lot of negative externalities. And in fact, you might argue that that might even be happening in some ways. And so yes, I'm very interested in how creativity and AI and things like in terms of like practical, like what application do I open and how do I combine this LLM with this thing? And that's part of it. But the other part of it is like, how do we create systems that keep the BIF problem from happening? And that means exploring new technologies and ways. So I think we're going to rapidly accelerate in AI. And the question is it going to be a handful of companies or is it going to be more of a communal effort? Um, and I think that that conversation just needs to be had a lot more because I think
Hmm.
there's a number of dangers that we should just speak out loud. I mean, nuclear bombs went off and people freaked out. I don't think we've had quite a nuclear bomb moment with AI yet, but it's possible. And so I think we just kind of need to have these conversations about it. And so raising awareness and speaking about it is something that I'm kind of passionate about.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Obviously, I didn't think you'd have a real answer to like a there's no simple answer to where
Yeah,
it's the one thing area I'm seeing is and especially in the creative field, and this is through some of my social media feeds, there's just a huge number of people who are against AI, especially in
yep.
creativity, which I understand the point of view, but I also think it's like the putting the head in the sand. It's like a, toothpaste out of the tube type situation, which I'm not saying we just got to go all in and let AI do all our creativity for us, but it is like not just saying, well, I'm never going to use it because I think it's like it's just it's here and it's not by not
So
using it like it's or by being so against it, it's not like you're gonna stop it from happening.
that's true, but I think that argument only carries so much water. I mean, I try to argue with a lot of artists all the time about whether or not they want most artists are absolutely against it because they feel that their work is being stolen. And I think that is an accurate assessment.
That I agree with.
And so one of the counters that I had is imagine if you could control your own AI, whether it's locally or open source or something, and then you used your data in a way that you got productivity gains, or you controlled your data in a way that other people could use it and you could monetize it. And I think that has to be figured out because we haven't figured that out. Right now, we're looking at a world where you won't need a creative animator or developer or whatever because somebody who has no skill will be able to prompt their way to it or
Hmm.
use AI in some sort of way to do that. And that's great. That might mean smaller teams and maybe some more interesting creative work. Someone who never made a video game before can now make a video game or make an app. That's going to be very exciting. But I think the counter is that people want to know that their work isn't going to be appropriated.
Yeah.
And I think if we really had an honest conversation about who controls the data, um, you might find more artists interested in utilizing it. Because right now they're not even engaging with it; they're just putting the wall up, and we really need a lot more engagement and a lot more discussion.
Yeah, and then that's kind of so that's one of the reasons you're writing the blog also is to kind of stimulate some of those conversations and discussion.
Raise awareness. It just also helps to know, when I say it, talking about AI and they don't read it, they were like, I saw you wrote about AI. Okay, great. at the very least, they know that I'm speaking about it, I'm talking about it, and I'm trying to be a little bit that alone is valuable if somebody is talking about it. It's kind of also hypocritical because very often they say they don't use it or whatever, but they're using ChatGPT, and then they think it's just like Googling,
Hmm.
and then also they use software where AI is incredibly integrated into all of our uses and workflows, but they don't really think about it as AI. They just, oh, it's a software. Um, so I think it's more just like about deliberately engaging with technology and understanding that, what it is and what it's doing and the implications of it. I think that's the best case we can have right now to just kind of raise awareness and then stimulate that conversation. Um, and then to where it's going, it really could go anywhere, but we have to deliberately shape it.
Okay. Well, I agree with that. It's an interesting conversation. It's a conversation that more people need to be having right now.
100%.
But like anything else, I do think it's engaging with it in some way versus just completely shutting down around it.
Yeah, putting the hands up and shutting down. I mean, that does not help you. I mean, if I don't use it and I continue just to write emails and you use it, you're just using GPT or Claude or something, just even to write faster emails. In 2 months, you're going to just be more productive than I am. You're going to get to that client faster. And I think you're going to start seeing that happen amongst society.
Yeah.
Business expectation will just be you need to use it. And so it's better that you're informed when that conversation comes to you that you know how to engage it.
Yeah. And because I think I'm finding in some of the people who are very opposed to it, their arguments come across as someone who doesn't really understand it. Um, which I think if you want to intelligently argue against something, you should take the time to understand it, but just throwing your hands up because of like some surface level understanding of the tool and being like, no, I don't like this is terrible because this and this. Like,
Well, it's also very difficult to understand because I think that we are completely creating a new computing way, right? You used to be a programmer a long time ago. Like
hmm
there's a front end and a back end, and you make calls and you write to a database, and now we're just talking about huge mathematical models and compute and energy. Um, and we're going to interact by talking to it and waving at it. And I just think there's going to be a huge destabilization in the way that we use these tools. And people are just expecting, well, it'll just be Google, right? I'll just be Googling it. But I really think there's going to be a profound change. And
Now, are you finding since you're working with younger people,
yep.
um, do you think there's gonna be like a generational divide because like people who've been working a certain way for 20, 30 years, I mean, some obviously are jumping in, but a lot are like, well, I'm just gonna use it like Google or here's my versus, college students or even younger who in their formative years are starting to adopt AI. Like,
Yeah.
are they going to be miles ahead because by the time they get into the workforce, they're going to
I
be
mean, it's
like
definitely a
way faster with
concern I
this?
have. It's definitely a concern I have. I think that there's going to be, like, if you just look at regular technology, when I would work with a row of artists in LA, there are some animators that could animate twice as fast as me and twice as better. Like they just are more productive. And I was always like, well, how did you do that? And they're always really good at like having shortcuts and little drop downs and being able to circle things and do it. And they just have methodologies of just being insanely productive. And I think if you apply that same kind of someone's going to have a hotkey where they can wave to their AI and it's going to wind up automating X, Y. They're just going to be a week better than you, a week faster than you are.
Hmm.
That's going to have profound effects, I think, for sure.
Well, this is sort of getting a little heavy, potentially doom and gloomy.
Yeah, I know.
So I want
It's
to,
a long
we're
go
going to finish
down.
up. We're kind of coming to the end here. Before we do that, though, I want to tie it all back to something you said right at the beginning when you were talking about kind of how you were working. And you use a phrase, I was always playing or I'm always playing.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that can make all this better. Kind of goes back to an improv thing and the mindset of like, yeah, change is scary. Learning a new technology is intimidating. Wondering how the different the world's going to be. Am I going to be obsolete? Is someone 30 years younger than me can take my job over? And I think one of the best ways to combat that and to get started is to think of it as play, not as like, oh my God, I gotta
100%.
learn AI. But like just play with the tool. Or you want to draw, like play with drawing, or you want to learn a new skill at work, like play with it. Don't put so much pressure on it because that pressure creates that paralysis.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could say it any better than that. I think there's an awful lot of pressure on. I mean, you still in the work environment need to deliver, which is why what I started with was the milestones. But within those milestones, anything is on the table. You can solve that problem any way you're able. And the more you are like scanning the internet and say, oh, what's that tool? And you just download it and poke at it and throw it in a folder. A week later, because you went through that little playing exercise, you know that that is a possible problem solver. And I think you just have to kind of be that constantly. I mean, I said that I was the guy, kind of the crazy guy that people are like, I got a crazy idea. Let me talk to Nye. And like, if you're open to that and want to play with that, you're just exposed to more interesting things, I think.
Yeah, and it
Um,
all becomes kind of fodder for your creative subconscious, kind of the just one more tool in your toolbox, a new way of looking at things, a different perspective.
which is good comes back to increasingly important because there won't be a method. You're going to be
Mm.
confronted with a problem or something you're going to have to do. You're going to see an AI model. You're not going to know whether you're going to need to evaluate that one or work with it. Or maybe, you want to work with this one with this, and like you want to use a little, it's like you're cooking. And sure you can use a recipe, but I think, the best ones have flair and style and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I've always been a recipe follower, and I always make. This sounds very braggy, but like we do this like regular Tuesday potluck with our group of friends who all have kids the same age, and
Yeah.
I get a lot of compliments on my cooking, and for a long time I'm like, am I a good cook, or am I just really good at finding and following recipes? Which, you know, are they different? But through that long process of just following recipes, now I've started to develop the ability to be like, oh, I don't have this ingredient. Here's what I can substitute, or oh, I think this needs a little more of this. But I think you mentioned something else. Like you kind of follow the method at first. You have to like learn the method and follow the
Yes.
method, but then you improvise, then you learn, then you break it.
Yeah, and I could use the same analogy with the way that I learned to kind of, I wouldn't even say I'm a programmer. Like I just use GitHub and I know like, oh, I need that piece and I need that piece and I can kind of smash them together and then change out a couple of variables. Like I don't think I could actually build a full program, but I am absolutely a smash it together kind of
Well,
guy.
it was really funny to me on social media years ago when you first started posting about like game stuff. And I'm like, what the hell does Nye know about games? Like, what is he doing writing about games? You just like kind of went
Nothing.
out and just started doing it.
I was just like, I'm gonna make a game. And I did it. And then the first one sucked. And then I made another one and I got a few players and then I got a contract and you just, you just
It's so
start
all
doing it.
it's you take the three things, right? You got the curiosity, so you scratch the itch. You take a playful mindset, so you're not overthinking it, just having fun, and you
Totally.
just start and iterate. Like that. I mean, I just literally defined improv comedy. I literally defined innovation, like game design, any project. Like just do those things and you'll get somewhere.
I really think doing improv as a formative thing in my life was one of the most like, I mean, you're teaching, but also just the group that we were with, it was always like somebody would like fire something and then it was you're on. You're trying to like top the guy or do a joke or like get to that joke faster. And I think there's sort of this, I'm still doing that. I'm just using computers and technology and all kinds of crap, but I'm still trying to tell jokes and break things.
Yeah, it's the mindset.
Yeah.
So we're gonna finish up here in a few minutes. I want to ask a couple of quick short questions. Before
Okay.
we do that, uh, people want to follow your writing, learn more about you, connect with you.
Yeah.
What's the best way? We'll put all the links in the show notes, but what are the best ways for people to contact and
Yeah.
follow you?
So you can go to nyewarburton.com. It's sort of my, my resume, my homepage. Then there's a blog link up there. My blog is linked there, but you can also go to paragraph.com/nyewarburton.eth. And I have a project that is nearing completion that I'm calling Ninth Dimension. It's a personal server that I've set up with my own. I'm using Llama, which is an open source model, and I'm trying to train it with my essays.
Mm.
And so I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to start chatting with my essays. I'm putting myself on the hook by announcing it out loud, but that's my motivation to try to get my bot out so you
And this
can
is and this is the thing you were talking about like creating your own kind of personal AI that like you
that I
train.
own. I control it. I control the personal server. I control the data that's with it, and then the data that I'm training with is on the blockchain through my blog. And I'm trying to model of, is this right? Is this what we're going to start moving towards when you start control, your autonomy over your own work? Um, so it's an experiment. I'm not really seeing it as a product or whatever, but it's just sort of a way for me to continue to scratch this idea that I'm thinking through. So yeah, nyewarburton.com, but look out for Ninth Dimension.
All right, well, I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. A couple quick questions. First, you mentioned this, when we were doing improv like 25 years ago, we had a small group of guys who were all kind of very good friends, and it was just like we're playing off each other.
Yep,
You recently, did you make a video recently, a YouTube video using AI of pandas?
that's correct.
Did you make that intentionally? And do you even remember that one of the funniest things you did when we were doing improv comedy?
Was a
We did,
panda
I
with
can't go into the
bamboo?
whole explanation. Yes, we did this game called Cutting Room where you like cut to different things, and we said cut to the scene of this monster attacking the city, and it was a panda. And you played the panda, and all you did was sit on your butt, pretend to chew bamboo, and then fall over. And you did it over and over, and we just could not stop laughing at this. You were like, "Oh, I just saw a documentary, and that's all the pandas did." So was that in your head when you made that that
It's
video?
probably, I mean, why do I go to pandas often? I think they're funny. And I mean, maybe that's not improv. Maybe that's just something that I always bring in, right? So it could have been there. It actually, I was just screwing around with Have a Panda talking, and one of those clips just made me thought it was hilarious. So I just kept going with it. And then it generated a 1 minute yeah, I should post that. It's a 1 minute documentary I did about pandas. So
That's funny. Second thing, which is really more about me, but we talk about playful, just try it, and
yeah.
you'll appreciate this. I just had a birthday, and one of the things I bought for myself is I've always wanted to draw. Like I always thought it'd be cool. I have no artistic ability. In fact, I'm so bad at it, my handwriting is almost illegible. So like I'm terrible. But I bought a book from a long time ago called Drawing Comics the Marvel Way.
Oh, I love that book.
And I'm reading it and I'm like, it's starting out. I'm like, this is because every book about drawing I've ever read is assumes a base level of knowledge I do not have. It's always like, oh, just do this. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. But then I
Yeah.
got to the chapter where it's like, oh, just start by drawing stick figures. And like you should draw
Lines
stick
of
figures for like
action.
weeks. Was that?
Yeah. Lines of action. I had a really
Yes, it
great
did
drawing
that. It's like draw the
teacher.
line of action.
Yeah.
And so we did like my youngest son likes to draw and my wife likes drawing. She's really good at drawing. So we did like family drawing night and my older son joined in. We all just sat at a table and drew. And all I did is I took up my Marvel Unlimited app and I went to like old comic book covers that I remember from my youth and I just like drew stick figures of the
Yeah.
covers and A, it was fun and B, I was like shocked. Even though it's just stick figures, right? I was like how I was like so proud of the outcome.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like that thing of like just play with a skill and try it. I'm like, well, but I thought of you so many times because I'm like, you're like the person I know who actually draws like comics and comic strips and stuff. I'm like, oh, it's like Nye, but little bit more advanced from here.
It's a great book. And the thing that's awesome about that book is the use of camera. I think there's a great page in there where like it goes down to the Doctor Strange. As Doctor Strange enters the room and it's like the camera has been lowered and the
Yeah,
way
and it
that they
shows
do
you like
the
here's the top, here's the middle, here's
yeah,
the
and
bottom.
like that's a great one. Yeah, give that to your kids to learn how to draw for sure. And
Yeah, well, we're
I
drawing together.
don't don't lose those skills. I actually think drawing and that kind of stuff, screw AI. I really think it's still important that you learn to like express yourself in whether it's drawing or improv or talking or splattering paint on something. I think that that's going to be more valuable. I don't know what or how. It might not be dollars, but it's certainly going to be more valuable.
Well, I also think that's where it's like just kind of doing it for yourself right now. Like,
Yeah.
like find your creative itch and scratch it because even if commercially it all gets outsourced out to AI, like there's still individual benefit to creating and pursuing even for yourself.
And like I have the things that I have up on my wall are from my kids. It's like personalized stuff, or when someone makes a funny comic about me at work and I stick it on my, I mean, that's the stuff that you really have attachment to. And I think that will be more valuable. If anyone can generate just a comic, one that comes from you that's personally to me is going to be that much more important.
Oof, I love that. Hey, real quick, I saw last time we talked that you had a Dogman poster on your wall. Is that just because you like Dogman, or do you like know the creator of Dogman?
No, it's because my kid reads them obsessively. And so, it was important for me to put a Dogman poster in my room because my 7-year-old really wanted to have a Dogman poster on the wall.
Got it. My older one does. He likes he's 10 and a half. All those that's a spinoff of Captain Underpants, right?
Yeah, Dav Pilkey.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he reads those plus the big names and all that. So I was just curious. I saw a post. I'm like, oh, like my kid likes that too. So I don't know.
No,
You know
I
some of these
don't know
people,
that
so I'm like, oh,
guy.
does Nye
No.
know Dave Pilkey?
I know some animators, but not that guy. So,
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, hey, Nye, this has been great. I want to finish up with my kind of final question I ask everyone who's on the podcast, which is,
okay.
I talk about the idea of saying yes and instead of yes but because I honestly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just started with a mindset of yes and instead of yes but. We'd be more positive, more collaborative, more creative. So, what is one small thing that you believe if everyone just did this one small thing, it would make the world a better place?
Oh, wow.
Can be anything. Doesn't necessarily have to do with like what we talked about here. Just like one thing. If everyone did, hey, I think the world will be better.
I think if everybody wrote or created something or made a thing and put it out there, that experience, whether no one looked at it or everyone looks at it, that alone is incredibly hard. So you just got to do it once. I think if everybody just did it once, just made something, did a thing, they would learn that's not so scary. Um, I would say, oh, I know, because I have a lot of students who I teach game development. I've discovered the most difficult thing is getting them to open the game engine for the first time. It's just opening the engine.
Hmm.
And if you can construct a mechanism where they open the engine and they learn like, oh, it's just software, and they reduce all of the fears. And so, whenever you're learning anything new, whether it's a game or drawing or doing, just do the first one. Just do it and like don't think about it. I think if everyone did that, I think first of all, they would see an explosion of ideas and content and stuff like that. But then also, I think people would have a little bit more confidence in themselves in general.
Hmm. I love that. And that comes back to just, get started, right? Take the
Just
first step.
start. Just start.
Love it. Well, Nye, hey, this is great. Thank you. It
Yeah,
was
it's
great
been
catching
fun.
up with you and love learning from you and kind of hearing all these cool things you've been working on. So thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Everyone listening, check out Nye's stuff. We'll put all the links in the show notes and yeah, go create something. Go get started.
Yeah, get started. Thanks, man.
Thank you.